Welcome to our channel. Today we'll be discussing a very important topic that can make or mar your microfinance institution. We'll be looking at risk management in microfinance institution. Risk introduction. Starting your microfinance or lending business is one thing. Nurturing it and keeping it safe is another thing. Over the years, I've seen countless microfinance banks and institutions come and go within the twinkle of an eye. Reason being non-implementation of adequate risk processes that will ordinarily nip the bud in the place. Sun Tzu, author of The Art of War, wrote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you neither know the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle." Where am I going with this? A lot of people think they know about their microfinance bank, but don't even know about their customers, the environment and the market they play in. If they eventually have an idea about their institution, they probably don't know about the risk inherent in running it. This is why you're here to understand how risk works and how it can be managed in microfinance institutions, banks, and other major financial institutions that has to do with lending. Let's go into part one of the subject matter, understanding risk. But before we do, let me ask you this risk game question. Number one, what can go wrong in your microfinance operations? Number two, what will the damage be when something eventually goes wrong? Number three, what can we do about it if the situation goes wrong? Number four, what is the likelihood of the effect of things going wrong? In selecting these answers that best face the question, we need to understand that business challenges are peculiar to the kind of problem they are trying to solve. Now, to answer the questions above. What can go wrong in your microfinance operation? The concern here is that of who is at risk of what? What will the damage be when something does go wrong? This looks at the scenario that may occur. What can we do if the situation goes wrong? We need to focus on protective factors and process that should be in place. Now, the final one says, what is the likelihood of the effect of things going wrong? This focuses on the relevant risk factors. The objective of our learning today is for you so that you can better understand and, number one, define risk and get a thorough understanding of the risk involved in microfinancing. Another thing is to learn how to identify and measure the different types of risk peculiar to microfinancing, to understand which level of risk microfinance banks and institutions are willing to take on, to have a walkthrough of the different kinds of risk that microfinance institutions face. These are mainly in financial risk and operational risk. We need to understand that risk management is one of the core functions in financial institutions. And finally, we need to be familiar with the key instruments to manage financial and operational risk and measure how to mitigate this risk effectively. Let's look at risk and risk management. If you don't mind me asking you another question, what is risk? Before giving us the answer to this question, let's take, for example, a car accident on the road, business failure, health challenges that might lead to one to be hospitalized, and then the financial crisis that can cause economic collapse in the society. Looking at the above, we can conclude that risk is a form of uncertainty about outcomes that may have a potential adverse effect on an individual or an entity. Risk is subjective as perceived by the entity that will sustain the loss or injury. The entity aspect is a concern today, and this is why your microfinance bank or institution might just be in grave danger if measures are not put in place to correct the abnormality. Just know one thing for sure. It is quite clear that risk events have no boundaries. Why the above risk are as a result of unforeseen circumstances? What do we say about this situation? An electricity official with full gear walking on a line, a guy with casual wear on the same line, and finding a man without clothes on sitting comfortably on a dangerous line. While we can figure out what might eventually happen to one or two of them, we should know that risk comes in form and certain negligence about outcomes that may have a potential adverse effect on an individual or an entity. In this case, it is objective. This is my point exactly. Majority of top management of microfinance banks and institutions try to fix problem without having adequate care to do this. This puts them in a tight corner and makes it difficult for them to solve problems that ordinarily would have been easy to solve for microfinance banks and institutions. Risk management. Let's be honest, this might be you or anybody else. We've defined risk. What is risk management? This is the process of identifying, assessing, and controlling financial, legal, strategic, and security risks to an organization's capital and earnings. Points to note in risk management. As staff of various financial institutions, we have to be risk conscious and to understand the role risk management plays in the survival of the business. Risks in microfinance institutions are inevitable. They come in different forms and ways, hence introduction of risk mitigating measures which are directly towards reducing severity of risk occurrence. This ultimately reduces the organization's exposure. The final point is that risk inherent in MFBs can be difficult to eliminate. The best option is to prioritize the risk so that the ones with severe influence can be effectively managed and reduced to the barest minimum. Now, how do we reduce this risk to the barest minimum? This involves a series of steps to reduce potential adverse effects that are bound to occur at unpredicted time. Choosing a risk reduction strategy will involve considering the suitability of the event. If, for example, your microfinance institution do not involve insurance as one of its services or partner services, it will be good to include it as one of its risk mitigating strategy and rather focus on the ones within its control limits. We'll be looking at 5 major ways to reduce risk. We start with 1, we need to identify the risk. We need to point out potential risks that may trigger future problems for the microfinance bank growth. We need to analyze the risk, assess the risk to determine the impact or likelihood of occurrence. We need to prioritize the risk. We need to rank the risk according to how important they may occur and the level of damage that they may inflict in the institution. We need to look at the mitigation strategy, that's mitigating the risk. While managing the above, we need to employ measures to tackle occurrence of risk so as to prevent the occurrence. Then finally, we need to monitor the risk. We need to continue to watch out for risks that may occur or that have occurred while learning and seeking for new ways to be one step ahead of mitigating strategies. Let's understand the risk nature. Are you risk prone or risk averse? Is your business risk prone or risk averse? In order to determine what risk nature you or your business exhibit, you need to first understand these 2 risk acronyms. Risk can cause a relapse, can cause irreparable damages, it can be suicidal to a process, and at the end of it can kill a business. On the other hand, risk can give useful results, it can make impact in people's life, it can create a successful business empire and enhance knowledge in the financial sector. When you hear the word no risk, no reward, this is exactly where it plays out. Where there is no risk, there is no reward. To understand a business risk element, we need to understand the business appetite and exposure. Does this now mean that risk is bad? No. It depends on the level you understand how to manage it better. To understand a business risk element, we need to understand the business appetite and its exposure levels, just like I've said. The risk appetite is the amount and type of risk your microfinance institution is prepared to pursue or take in order to attain the objective of the organization and those of its shareholders and stakeholders. Now, how is it different from the risk exposure? The risk exposure describes the extent to which you want to be vulnerable to the certain risk or portfolio risk. Exposing is more frequently used like this. Risk exposure designs a gross measure of risk before taking account of risk mitigation and before applying any particular knowledge about the probability of loss events that would activate the exposure. In understanding this, you need to ask yourself, what now is the right level of risk that one can take? Does this picture ring a bell? If the Titanic can fall, which entity can't? Risk management needs to become a style of thought and definitely not to be a mere paper chase program where you put down and decide not to follow up with. Staff, managers, and directors of microfinance institutions have to make decisions about what level of risk is acceptable and desirable for the institution. The risk-return trade-off is a very, very complex issue, and there are no blueprints to depend on, which means you need to adequately manage which risk you can and you shouldn't go ahead above off. Risk management limitations. Despite desire to correct abnormalities that inflict microfinance internal and external factors, risk managers find themselves entangled in processes that make it difficult to achieve set outcomes. Looking at some of them, we have issues like costs, the cost involved. Cost plays a very important role in implementing risk policies. It's hard to implement. It's not the same as actual implementation. The former wishes while the latter consummates. Then we have the contract error. Entering into contract with high-risk elements can be dangerous to the institution. Technical know-how is a mandate to achieving the required and desired risk threshold as it relates to risk management procedure. We have the knowledge gap. A lot of microfinance professionals lack the necessary skills to carry out assigned tasks timely. This hinders the durability and implementing the required task asked when due. Then finally, we have wrong partnership in this situation. Internal and external partnerships are things that limit risk tendencies. Staff and external partners not vested with microfinance institution goals and objectives are bound to go off script for lack of understanding. This now leads us to risk categorization type. Let us categorize risk for better understanding and implementation. In doing so, we'll be looking at 3 risk category types. They are 1, the known risk, 2, the predictable risk, and 3, the unpredictable risk. Starting with the known risk. These are risks that can be uncovered after careful evaluation of the project plan, the business and technical environment in which the project is being developed, and other reliable information sources, e.g. unrealistic delivery dates. It's something that is quite clear. You know it's not going to work, so you know it. Now, looking at the predictable risk, these are those that are extrapolated from past project or experiences. Examples that come from past turnover or historical events that the financial institution can base its assumption on. Then now let's look at the final one, which is the unpredictable risk. This risk can and do occur, but are most times extremely difficult to identify or decoded in advance. Their outcomes are unknown as the time of happenings vary. For example, we know fraud may occur in a microfinance institution, but you can never determine when it would start. To be on the cautious side, let's focus on the predictable risk and specific subcategories. To achieve this, we need to do these particular things. Number 1, we need to draw a list of all characteristics relevant to each risk that you have been able to identify in your microfinance bank. You need to prepare a questionnaire that leads to estimates of all the impact of each of the risks that may occur. Then you need to prepare the list containing identified set of risk components and drivers and the probability of occurrence, because it's very, very important. When you do this, I can tell you your microfinance bank, be it short time, long time, or medium time, will stand the test of time. This concludes our risk lecture for today. We'll see you in our other exciting lectures that are coming up. Please do remember to subscribe. We have lots and lots of lectures in the microfinance series archive that you will learn from. You also get to receive first-time notifications as soon as we release our new learning content. See you.